Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Breaking It Down with me, Michel Falcon. I built this show to welcome entrepreneurs and professionals just like you to talk to me about some of the challenges that they are faced with in regards to three topics: company culture, employee engagement, and customer experience. On this episode, I am welcoming Nick Dinardo. He is an executive from Salesforce. During our time together, we discussed how to increase employee engagement with remote teams. He asked me about customer experience and onboarding new clients. And we also talked about how to balance sales and customer experience goals. If you're interested in being on this show, email me directly. Now let's get into the episode with Nick Dinardo. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Breaking It Down. I have the pleasure to be speaking with Nick Dinardo. We were connected on LinkedIn. He
Yep.
reached out, said, I want to be on the show. I said, fantastic. So we made some time to chat today. Nick, before we go any further, do I know what you are going to ask me?
You do not. You have no clue what I'm going to ask.
All
Hopefully, I
right.
throw
And I
some
put a
curveballs.
lot of emphasis on this because I want people to know like none of these answers are rehearsed. And if I'm ever asked a question that I don't know the answer to, I'm going to tell you. Because I don't want to be a charlatan that parades around pretending to know everything. If I don't know, I'm going to let you know. Nick, I would do you a disservice by doing the introduction of who you are. So I'd rather my guests introduce themselves. Let the audience know who you are, where do you work, what do you do?
Sure. Nick Dinardo, from Cumberland, Rhode Island, born and raised in the New England area. I have two kids, a 3.5-year-old son and a 4-month-old daughter. Married to my beautiful wife, Sarah, for the last 6 years. And I work at Salesforce, actually our social enterprise arm, which is salesforce.org. So we serve nonprofits and higher education institutions out of this arm. I'm the regional vice president of sales for the Northeast. So I lead a team of 7 account executives remotely. So that's actually going to be one of the things I'd like to discuss today. But great to be on, and thanks for doing this, Michelle. This is a really, really valuable thing.
Awesome. So Salesforce, very recognizable company. I've had individuals, entrepreneurs that have worked and owned their own small businesses. I was excited to jump on with you today, just given the sheer scale of the company and what unique challenges you guys have. So let me know what's your first question.
Yeah. So took on this role within the last 10 months. It's a remote sales team, so everybody's kind of dispersed around New England, and actually we have one rep who's in Philadelphia. So my number one question to you is driving engagement with a remote sales force and driving team unity with a remote sales force. That's been a challenge for me. It's funny, the way I kind of think about it is it's almost like it's almost like a tennis team where you have a bunch of individual contributors who want to win their match, but it's tough to drive a team atmosphere in an individual sport. You know what I mean? In sales.
Absolutely.
So, curious to get your opinion on how to drive team culture and engagement.
Well, my first response is actually a question back to you to better understand the structure of the team. How are you hosting one-on-ones with each individual, and how are you bringing the team together as of today?
Yeah. So one of the things that I try and do is minimize internal meetings so that they can focus on what they do best, which is customer meetings and engaging our customers. So we have weekly, we have 30-minute one-on-ones with each team member. That's usually
Virtually through a video interview or video stream. Okay.
that's right, just to check in, personal development. What can I do to help you? Any pressing issues that I can help with, to start the week off. We have a monthly team meeting. Actually, I just got off of the team meeting where it'll be literally just development stuff where we'll talk about, hey, how are we doing this month? How are we doing for the quarter? And then we'll dive into pretty much peer peer coaching. So we'll have a couple of people talk about, hey, this is how we do white space analysis. This is how I do territory planning, that sort of stuff. And then we'll have an internal team member talk about how they can add value to, driving opportunities and driving business. So we do that on a monthly basis. There's a lot of my colleagues that will do that on a weekly or bi-weekly. I just feel like that's a lot of time invested. So those are the two consistent ways. And then we also have quarterly business reviews with the team. We talk about, here's my plan for the year, or maybe it's just a current state analysis of where they are and how they plan on improving.
How long are these monthly meetings, and are they all dialing in at the same time via Zoom or an in-house software that you guys maybe have?
Yeah, so they're usually an hour long. The one-on-ones are just obviously one-on-ones. The team meetings, everybody's dialing in via Google Hangout.
Okay. I would consider doing it every 2 weeks, 30 minutes, because I have a hard time believing that you can build a team together just by coming together once a month.
No.
And then an hour, like I don't want to be in an hour for anything. To your point, you want your team members to be able to be connecting with customers, right? And I understand that that's probably why most leaders will say, okay, I'm going to do it once a month. I wouldn't go with the weekly until you figure out if the bi-weekly works for you. So try every 2 weeks for 30 minutes. If that works better than what you currently have, in time, maybe you explore 15-minute weekly meetings, but that's all dependent on the agenda. Like if you have an engrossed, like a deep agenda with a lot of discussion items, then the weekly probably won't work for you because it'll feel rushed, and then the sentiment of the message won't be heard. Yeah. Can you walk me through the structure of the meeting?
Yeah, the team
on the monthly.
So typically it will be 10 minutes. I will do a state of the team pretty much. It's like, hey, great month last month. Here's what we did from a numbers standpoint. Here are some standout performances from team members so that they can get a shout out. Here's where we are for this month, and these are the opportunities that we're tracking, and these are the things we need to be concerned about as a team. So trying to show them the regional perspective so they can kind of come together as a team.
Yes.
And then from there, typically I'll do 15 minutes. So I'll ask a team member prior, hey, would love to have you contribute on this call. You've done some 2 or 3 things really well. With can you put together 15 minutes on this topic, something like that, or open forum, whatever the topic is you think would be helpful. Feel free to go. So we'll do one team member for 15 minutes. We'll do another team member for 10 to 15 minutes, and then from there we'll do an internal team member, or we'll have a customer come on for 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Nice.
So I try to break it up into just like you're talking about the chunks. An hour is a long time, so I try and make sure that I'm breaking up each topic into smaller chunks and making sure it's actionable. That's typically how it goes. And then for the next meeting, we have a document. It's like a Google document, or Quip it's a collaboration document where they can bullet point different things that they'd like to discuss on the next call. So
got it. Okay. So how long has that model been in place for?
3 months or so. I just found, we were doing the one-on-ones. We were doing a team forecast call, which was just about, hey, here's where we are for the month. This is what you have for opportunities. Tell me where these opportunities are in the sales cycle right now.
Got it.
Very operational.
Right.
And what we did, I actually surveyed the team and said, hey, would you rather do this team forecast call, or would you rather break it up into 15-minute increments? It's just a one-on-one forecast call instead. Okay. They unanimously opted for the forecast for the one-on-one forecast call. So we lost that team, approach. So I added the team personal development meeting.
Okay. So a couple things. If you feel like there's an opportunity to to elevate and refine this time together as a team so that you do in fact come together as an organization remotely, there's a couple of things that I would explore and make sense. And ultimately, like, I can give recommendations till I'm blue in the face for things that work for me. But I'm not, whenever a guest comes on, I'm not saying rip this off, carbon copy. Explore it. Maybe some things make more sense than others, right? So here I go. Are you the one that always hosts the meeting?
Yes.
Okay. I would consider allowing the host to change. Allow some of your team members to be the host. You can create a schedule. So for example, Samantha is going to be the host for the first meeting in January. Joseph will be the second
Like that.
meeting host. And have it in a 3-month schedule so they know who's responsible for what by when. Okay, that gives them some of the opportunity to really own that, refine their leadership ability as well. You'll notice engagement will go up, at least for the host for that one time, right? But of course, we want engagement from everyone. Okay. Next, this is a simple YouTube search. Search O as in Oscar, the number 2, and then E as an elephant. O2E huddle, like football huddle video. That's going to share the daily stand-up meeting that a company called O2E, which is the parent company of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, as I refer to them, my alma mater. It shares their daily stand-up, which I think works fantastic for team meetings as well, whether it's every week, every month, bi-weekly, or whatever. But essentially what they go through is they have a host that changes. Then they talk about numbers. Okay, what are the numbers that are impacting your team? And which sounds like you're already doing that. So you've check mark next to that. But then it has a section called In the News. So one person from your team would be responsible for talking for, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes about what are they currently working on right now? What do they need help with, right? So that's where they get their time. And then lastly, there's 2 other parts: missing systems and opportunities. This is when you come back and you take over the meeting and say, guys, what do you need from the team, from us, from the organizations? What are some missing systems? What are some opportunities that we have in front of us? And then lastly, it's I think it's celebration or cheer or something like that, where the team gets to give a shout out, being like, hey, Steve, thank you so much for helping me with that client, the way that you taught me how to objection handle, or whatever the case, right? So it's just an opportunity for everyone to give each other kudos in a formal setting. So watch that video. I think it's no more than 3 minutes. It's a great video, and it's quite inspiring as well. Perhaps you could use that as your structure. But this is the most important thing when it comes to change. Regardless of whether it's a big or a small change in the organization, you need to help the team understand why you are going to make this change. How does it impact them? Because at the end of the day, individuals, maybe they don't choose these words, but they're going to ask themselves, what's in it for me? How does this impact me, right? Before the organization, before your leadership. So craft this message and say, I'm spitballing here, but team, I want to change this from monthly for an hour to every 2 weeks for 30 minutes, because I think it's going to be more impactful. We come together as a team. We have the opportunity to learn from each other in this micro meeting. And this is the structure that I would like to that I will roll out. Your language is important. When you say, if you say that I would like to roll out, what are your opinions? I love giving my team members opinions, an opportunity to share them when change is about to happen. But the challenge with that is they don't know what they don't know. So if they're going to give an opinion on something that they don't know, like if you are confident in your leadership ability and you look at another company that's doing something well, go forward with it, right? But you have to have the humbleness that if it doesn't work, you own that and say, that didn't work. Then perhaps at that time say, team, I want actually your opinion. what do you think we should do with this? But I host meetings this way. They work very well, and I've had a number of teams host meetings based on this structure. I haven't had any negative feedback for in-person and remote teams. So the structure is very actionable and it's light. It's not too hard to implement this.
Love
Does
it.
that help?
That's very helpful.
Try
Absolutely.
that. And I always suggest things in quarters when it comes to change like this. That's why I recommended have hosts for at least 3 months, have people in the news for the first 3 months, and don't change it until you've seen it happen for a quarter.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, you have a peer host, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah, it gives them ownership over it. And also for you, you get to take a step back and just, monitor and analyze their presentation skills, their leadership ability. And then, if they do a fantastic job, great. And then if they have an opportunity to maybe present in a better fashion, then you have an opportunity to coach them.
Right.
What
Awesome.
else you got for me, Nick?
All right. So let me find my second question here. So, all right. So one of the things that we are, as you mentioned, Salesforce, high growth enterprise software company. I think one of the things that is a challenge for us is managing from a sales perspective. We have aggressive growth goals, right? We're
Of
always,
course.
we grew, let's say we grew at, 25-30% last year. It's going to be that or more next year. Right. So we have to manage these growth goals and velocity of sales, but at the same time, how do we make sure that we have a relentless focus on the customer experience, right? We don't want our sales goals to have a negative impact on the customer, right? And feel like they're being sold to. So what is your thought on that when you have strong growth goals that are well-meaning, but also, you're trying to balance that with customers?
So make it a constant conversation item. Every single time you guys meet as a team every 2 weeks, perhaps you have a little section within there called the state of the customer experience, where each team member is always talking about it. It can't be something that is customer experience isn't a campaign that you deploy and rally the troops. It has to be ingrained into the DNA of the company. So that's the first thing that I would say, just constantly, like your team has to know before the meeting, being like, Nick's about to talk about the customer experience, right? Like he's always pounding that drum in conjunction with the sales efforts, of course,
Mm-hmm.
right? But also understanding like sales isn't a customer experience is an outcome. Pardon me. Sales is an outcome of a great customer experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's some companies that are great at sales, but they live quarter over quarter, right? Whereas companies, you want to be living decade over decade and have that mentality. So you have to constantly be beating that drum as a leader. But you also need to celebrate customer experience wins just as much as you do sales wins, because it sends the team a loud message being like, you know what, I can't just be sales focused. I have to be sales and customer experience focused. Like look at Apple. I use Apple as an example, and I know sometimes people roll their eyes, but I use it as an example because it's familiar. Apple has very aggressive sales goals as well, being publicly traded company in a fierce competitive market. But when I'm a customer, I don't feel that sales
Yes.
centric approach. I feel the guest centric, the customer centric approach.
Absolutely.
Oh, and by the way, I went to go buy a watch. I walked out with a watch and a bunch of accessories. I was totally sold to, but I didn't even know it. So one, it's the constant beating of that customer centric drum in conjunction with the sales efforts as well too. The second, as your lead, as the leader of the company, just helping the team member understand how to sell with a customer centric approach. And then the third part to being able to continue to drive sales while having a great customer experience is getting into, of course, do you being remote, actually, let me walk this back and ask you a question first. Being remote as the customer's leaders, do you do city visits? Like, do you go meet with the team?
Absolutely.
How often is that happening?
I mean, depends on the territory, but I mean that's that's a key focus for us, is to make sure that we are being face to face with our customers, especially early on when we're trying to ask the right discovery questions, really get a sense for their business. So I would say 3 times a week, 2 or 3
Okay,
times.
that's a
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great amount. So I understand. I've seen companies have a very sales centric approach to things. But then what happens, and then they say they're customer centric, but what happens is that what they really are is customer acquisition focused.
Hmm.
And then the customer retention processes, budgets, time, effort fall to the wayside. So you need to ensure that your team members can balance the acquisition with the retention. Now, people don't fail, processes do. So if you feel like your customer experience isn't being delivered to your expectation, first, audit the team member, but then also ask yourself, do we as an organization have the right systems and processes in place so that we can allow the team member to in fact be customer focused, or
Yeah.
sorry, sales focused, while also balancing the retention piece? Is the customer properly being onboarded? Do we have the right service level agreements? If customer emails us, is our service level agreement respond within 1 business day maximum, or whatever the case might be? So dissect that, and don't allow those processes to remain stagnant, right? Customer retention processes need to evolve just as much as our customer acquisition strategies. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a dental group that owns some dental practices, and their service level agreement in year one when we worked together was, we are going to respond to every single customer outreach, whether it's email, phone, whatever, within 1 business day maximum. Well, they exceeded that goal. It wouldn't make sense for that to be the same goal in year two. So we said 12 business hours maximum. And then we're going to get better and better and better. Very similar. This sounds similar to your sales goals, right? They're not going to get worse than the year before. They're only going to get better or remain the same or higher. So why wouldn't our customer retention service level agreements and processes, why
Sure.
shouldn't they act the same way?
Right. Exactly.
That's how I would answer that question.
That's great. I love it.
You got one more for me?
Yeah, I do. All right. So let's see. Let's go with um, along the lines of customer experience. One of the things that I think about a lot is, once we acquire a customer or sell an add-on product or service to a customer, the initial impression post sale for that customer is obviously critical to customer experience, right? It's the primacy effect. How do you, in your opinion, how important is that? And then how do you make sure that you optimize that opportunity? Because that's going to help drive retention and drive add-on sales opportunity.
Okay, so just to be clear, you're referring to the onboarding part of acquiring a new customer and building that experience? Okay, great. There are 3 things that go on into onboarding, whether it is a customer or an employee. One, it's the technical stuff. So in your world, it'd be like, okay, who's our main point of contact? How are you going to pay us? And da, 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 right? That's the first, technical. The second part is emotional. So what are we going to do for you to differentiate ourselves as SaaS software in the marketplace? So for example, if I was to use your technology, I would expect it to work, to do what you said it would do. And that's just meeting my expectations. But for me, as if I was the decision maker that ultimately said, yes, I'm going to use Salesforce, throughout that discovery, before I said, I'm going to take you up on your offer, you probably would have learned a thing or two about me. Okay? Maybe that's by way of dialogue. I told you that I'm at home with my dog Maggie. Or if you asked how was your evening, and I said, you know what, it wasn't that good because the Vancouver Canucks lost. Or, I'm going to share these things with you about my personal life. That is the emotional part, what I call customer intelligence, that you can leverage to build a strong relationship with me when you onboard me into your company as one of your customers. So it's a form of gifting, but it doesn't have to be an actual gift itself. So I'm just like, if I went through this process and all of a sudden something shows up in my office and I'm like, oh, he's good. He was listening, right? Like, carve out a budget to be able to do things like that. But again, it doesn't have to be a gift. It has to do with listening to your customers during the discovery part, not just what they want about business, but who are they as an individual, a human being? How can I build rapport with them? Now, it's very similar to our personal lives. The strongest relationships we have in our personal lives aren't just built by giving gifts and compliments. It's by truly understanding that person. What's their definition of success? And serving that. That's the bullseye. So that's the second part of onboarding, is kind of the emotional part, where your customers are like, this isn't any other type of software company. They're not just taking me through all the checks and balances and things that they have to cross off their to-do list. And then the last part is the learning and development. Like, how do I intimately use this tool? So it's really 3 stages for me. I think companies do step 1 really well. They do step 3 moderately to good. And then step 2, I think, is absent in most organizations, whether it's hospitality like me or software like your industry. So it requires a process that you must follow. And as the leader of your team, it's your responsibility to design that for them, present it to them with your ideas. But this is where you can ask them for their feedback, because they're speaking to customers collectively more than you are as an individual. So this is where you need to get their buy-in to the process by allowing them to share some feedback and give their opinions, because they're the ones living within that process, and they deserve to have their say in how that process is going to impact their day-to-day operations so that they can deliver the experience to the customer. The When I said earlier, hosting the meeting, designing that meeting, that's on you, right? The customer experience part, designing that onboarding strategy, do that collectively with the team, because it's something that impacts them every single day.
It's awesome. I agree. The emotional part is definitely absent, or just not as thought out.
Yeah, you know what? Think about, don't look at other software companies to see what they do. Think of like hotels. How do hotels make you feel so good when you go to a nice one, right? Like, what is that? What are they doing? Dissect that, study other industries that are known for onboarding customers. And it doesn't have to be in the traditional technology sense. Like, there's a lot of technology companies that are looking at Warby Parker and companies like this for examples of how can you deliver a great experience. And I think that's one thing that you have an opportunity to do for your team.
Amazing.
All
Thank
right.
you. Appreciate it.
Nick, has this been helpful?
It's been awesome. Appreciate
Fantastic. I am going to link up your LinkedIn profile below. Thank you so much for jumping on and coming with your questions. I really appreciate it. And good luck. I will follow up with you within 3 months, as I do every guest, to see how things are working out for you.
Sounds great. Thanks for all you do, and thanks for the help.
All right. Take care. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Breaking It Down. If you want to be on the show, email me directly. I would love to have you. If you learned something by watching the episode with Nick, please consider sharing this episode with a family member, a friend, a peer, or a colleague, and let them know that I'm going to be hosting many more of these episodes. I'll see you next time.